What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and I started this YouTube channel from my heart to share my personal recovery journey. I share what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me, and what still continues to work for me today. I am grateful for all my subscribers and the supportive comments, even the unsupportive comments, and so I'm grateful for everybody's involvement in my channel. I want to speak about how hard parenting becomes when a person gets sober. And it's not necessarily just getting sober, because for me, I was sober several years before I decided to come into recovery, but I was depressed for 2 of those years. So yes, I fulfilled my child's basic needs, but I was completely emotionally unavailable because I was emotionally unavailable to myself. And the thing for me is that my entire childhood, I grew up around emotionally unavailable people. And so emotional unavailability looked normal to me. And the thing is that before I actually came to recovery, I was isolated with just me, my spouse, and I was a stay-at-home mom with my toddler. I had zero support. It didn't matter what book I read, what YouTube video I watched. Like, I couldn't apply what I was learning, and the reason is because I wasn't addressing what was underneath the surface, right? Like, I had all this guilt, this shame, this resentment. And you know, I talk in my other videos, in 2020, or 19, I decided to stop drinking because of fear. And I stayed sober for my child. I stayed sober for my spouse. I was definitely not staying sober for myself, because trust me, I wanted to drink. I did not want to get sober, but a large part of me knew the consequences of me picking up a drink could result in taking somebody's life or taking my own. And that's the only reason why I quit drinking, because of fear. And I threw myself into college as a coping mechanism while raising a toddler. Don't know how I did that. I really don't. And college became my new addiction. I mean, like, a serious addiction, to the point where it burnt me completely out. And a person can only mask for so long sober. And that's my point in saying this back information, is because I realized, like, getting sober didn't solve anything. It honestly caused more problems, because I didn't have a program of recovery to help me identify my problems and to give me a solution or a support system to help me. And so I'm grateful for Zoom meetings, because about 3 years ago, I found Zoom meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I found Adult Children's of Alcoholics and Dysfunctions, and later on I found Emotions Anonymous. I mean, there's about over 20 to 50 12-step programs available, and all other types of recovery programs available, Buddhist and secular, for all fellowships. So I mean, like, there's a whole, like, internet world of, like, resources to help people that don't involve a large sum of money, and of course they ask for donations, but $1 here and $1 there compared to paying $1,000 for an 8-week course. I mean, come on now. That, I'm not going to get into that, because I believe, that's my personal opinion, and I would never do that, and people have to make a living, and I understand that. And the thing is that knowledge is free, but I mean, like, especially with ChatGTP now, and I'm bringing that up because, like, the first year of recovery, I was completely working on myself. My first year of recovery involved, like, breaking old unhealthy habits, developing new ones, developing new healthy coping mechanisms, developing a support system, like a healthy support system, people I could truly feel safe with, people who could teach me. I had so many role models in my life. I would always choose to be around people who were older than me or had more time in the program than I did, so I could learn from them and I could grow from them. It's like these things I focused on intensely when I got in the program. And then I think about a year and a half, a little bit over a year, I started meditating. So I've been meditating almost 2 years now, something like that. And before meditation, I could not pause. I was a very impulsive person. I would act on my emotions. And with years of doing that, and my child learning and seeing me doing that, she's developed that. And the thing about recovery is that it's painful. It's painful. It's painful to see that I am responsible for a lot of the characteristics she's developed. But the thing is that recovery and meditation has given me the ability to separate that guilt and not go down a rabbit hole of rumination, of beating myself up, of I could have done this, I should have done this, I should have gotten recovery when she was this age, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it used to, yes, it did. But allowing myself to truly process that guilt and to like cry when I wanted to cry, and just learning self-forgiveness and positive self-talk and learning to treat myself with love and compassion, over time I realized that I wasn't feeling the guilt as I once was. It was more of motivation to do better, instead of guilt. And the thing is that, you know, children don't understand why things need to change. They don't even see a problem, because, you know, I spent my whole life in denial and not knowing that there was a problem. But, you know, through all the research and support people I have, and counseling, I've been in and out of counseling for a decade. I'm currently in counseling with my 8-year-old, and we've been in counseling together for about a year. I see her counselor on the side. That doesn't include all the inner work I do, and I've got this book. It's called Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. And this is the best parenting book I have ever came across. And the reason why is because the first part of the book is about the parent healing themselves first before they can help their kid. Now, I've had this book for a very long time before I came into recovery, because I would always buy all these books and try to work out these books. But the thing is when I would go to open this book, I think like one of the first or second exercises in here is like a forgiveness letter to myself. And I could never face myself because I didn't have tools and I didn't have coping mechanisms to help me deal with the guilt in a healthy way. And so I would always close this book, and I can't remember about how long I was in recovery, but I came across the book again, and I picked it up and I started working at it. I was like, I can do this now. Like, this is nothing. And so I feel like I needed to build that solid foundation before I was ready to open this book up. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying? So this book is so beneficial. Even if you're not a parent, it's beneficial, because the first part of the book, like I said, is teaching a person how to heal themselves. And so, like, it can even be for fathers. It can be for fathers, for mothers. It doesn't matter who you are. This book is very beneficial. And the second half of the book, I worked in the first part of the book, of course, before moving to the half. But also, I'm the type of person, my brain is so hyperactive that I like to just randomly open the book, and whatever it lands on is what I do. And I always get my notebook when I'm doing this, because it's got exercises all throughout the book. And it's hard to complete these exercises. It's painful. It's painful to face the consequences of what happens when a person is emotionally unavailable to their children. And that's my main intention of creating this video, is that if I didn't have coping mechanisms and tools to help me today, which meditation plays a large part in my life, and positive self-talk. And I repeat these things in my videos, every single video, because I would not be where I am without these things. It would be impossible. And so, you know, I've learned that through time, with modeling something different to my child, she's going to pick up on it. And there's more growth in our relationship than I've ever had with her my entire life, except when she was like 1 to 3. That was a different type of relationship. But like, you know, the thing is what scares me the most as a parent and as a human being in general is seeing a 9-year-old that cannot regulate their anger. And you know, she got in her first physical altercation at school, and I knew she started it. And when I asked the teacher, she said yes, she started it. And the thing is as a parent and as a human being and as a child that once suffered from having a lot of anger and a lot of sadness and a lot of hurt, I can empathize with her, okay? So it's coming from a place of empathy and not like criticizing her or like you shouldn't be acting like this, or you don't need to do this, and blah blah blah, like in a controlling aspect way, like trying to put fear in her to make her behavior be good, right? Like that's what was done to me as a child. They instilled fear in me because that's how I was good. And yeah, it was effective as back then, but it fucked me up as an adult. Okay, I don't agree with that parenting type. And see, this just came up, and I speak from my heart. I was at Sam's Club the other day, and I saw a human being, like, not tap. The child was probably no more than 5 or 4 maybe. She was very small. And the child wasn't doing anything, just normal kid stuff, like when they're being annoying and trying to grab for stuff and being all cute. And she just, bow! I mean, she hit her so hard, like, I felt it. And, like, I paused, and I became, like, physically, emotionally dysregulated because my heart broke for that child. Because, like, as a child, I know what it's like to be physically abused. I know what it's like to be slapped in the face and not understand why you're getting slapped in the face. I know what it's like to be beaten by belts so bad that you're bleeding. So I felt for that kid. And that is one thing that I told myself I would never do to my children. I would never instill fear in them like that, because it doesn't work. And it doesn't, for me as a child, I remember it just made me afraid of my caregiver. It didn't make me feel emotionally safe to where I could come and talk to them. So my goal since I've been in recovery is to make my child feel like this is her safe place. But in order for me to do that, when she comes and tells me things that causes me to experience a lot of fear, it's a work in progress. We're getting a lot further. And as long as I maintain my meditation practice, I know it will keep moving further. But, I've learned that if I pause, even if it's a long pause, every time I pause and I do a long pause, I always articulate and come up with something to say. But if I don't meditate that day, or if I'm rushing that day in the morning or whatever, like, I'm not going to be able to pause. And that's just how it works for me. But I've noticed when I stay calm, because I see progress, she comes to me and she talks to me. She tells me how she's feeling. She tells me what happens at school. And that's the key for me right there, is to not, is to be the role model that I never had, to pause when she has an attitude and she's, frustrated and things, and she's being emotionally dysregulated, because that can cause me to become emotionally dysregulated. It's like I match her energy because I feel her pain, right? I know what it's like to feel like that. And for me to get to a place in my recovery where I can be physically, emotionally dysregulated, but pause and sit with those physical sensations and separate those sensations and separate, like, logic, like what is really going on right now, separate the fear, separate the guilt, and separate how I'm going to respond to her in a healthy way. That's a lot of things to separate in my brain, okay? But like I said, it's a work in progress, but there's more progress than there's not, because I continue to work on myself. That's the key here. There's no way I could expect my child to change if I wasn't going to change. Like, there's no way, if I'm not modeling to her healthy things, then she's not going to be healthy. But I believe that because here I am coming from the type of childhood I came from, the dysfunction I experienced, and I'm breaking the cycle. I'm unlearning things or learning new things to help me unlearn and not do the old things, so I have hope. I have faith. Do I have expectations? Hell no, I have no expectations. I've learned not to have expectations with any human being, because I set myself up every time. And I think that's the hardest part about being a mother, is the fear. Because when I was growing up, my grandmother would be in so much fear that it would come out yelling and screaming and criticizing, instead of, like, comforting me, like telling me how I can do better or how I can overcome what I'm struggling with, or guidance. There was no guidance. It was always screaming, yelling, and criticism, because they didn't know how to deal with their fear. And I completely empathize with that, and I can completely relate to that, especially as a mother now. I know what they felt. And so, the thing is that when I saw that lady hit that child at Sam's, I became emotionally, physically dysregulated. And my daughter was already sitting at the table. I don't even know if she saw it. But I paused and I stared at her, and I'm like, don't say anything. It's not your place to say anything. And I didn't, because it's really not my place. It's really not. And so I didn't, of course. But I went and I sat down with my daughter, and I was like, hey, you want to play I Spy? And I was physically dysregulated. And my point in telling this is that before meditation, there was no way I was going to be able to do something like that. But that one experience activated things from my childhood that I haven't thought about in a very long time. So, that's a different story for a different video, but I dealt with it, and I didn't allow it to change my attitude, change how I treated people or how I treated myself. I showed myself love and compassion. See, what I've learned is that when painful thoughts come up from my past, I can actually acknowledge them. I don't have to stay stuck in them. I can not reach for them and grab hold of them. I can just let them be. And it's hard to be a parent in recovery, and it's hard to model something different. And like I said, I've chosen to do a lot of inner work on myself and heal a lot of things from my childhood. And honestly, there are things I truly believe, and this is my personal experience, and I'm going to say this because this is my personal recovery journey. I have triggers on a daily basis. I don't believe that a trigger can be 100% healed, because it hasn't for me. But what has happened is that my perspective towards that trigger and my ability to separate the trigger from who I am, from my self-worth, and not latch on to the trigger and ruminate and explode and flash out is what's changed. But triggers actually disappearing and stuff, that hasn't happened for me. But the way I deal and manage them has. And I don't know, it might have to do with my environment of why I'm actively triggered on a daily basis. I'm not quite sure. But the thing is that, meditation is really giving me the ability to separate the guilt and to be able, every situation I've had with my daughter since I've been in recovery, since I've been meditating, really, because that's when I really developed more self-awareness, and I had really worked on myself. I was kind of ready once I found this parenting book to dive into that stuff. I self-reflect on every situation. I feel I could have responded differently, okay? And I write it down, and I'm like, what did I do, right? Okay, well, I shouldn't have talked in that tone, or I could have done this instead, or I could have said this instead, or, I look at her part also, and not in a judgmental way, not in a critical way, but I'll look at her part and her behavior to see how my behavior could have affected, her behavior or attitude, or how her attitude and behaviors could have affected mine, and how I reacted and how she reacted. And I'll look at, well, what could she have done differently? And instead of going back to her and being like, you could have done this, you should have done this, I figure out a way to say things without making it like a big deal, on the slide, like slick, and she doesn't even realize I'm pointing it out. And my counselors really helps me with doing that. Also, that is a learned behavior. I was not born with that. But that's the thing. I do it in a way to help my kid, help myself, help our relationship. And recovery is a process. And the number one relapse with people in recovery who try to get sober is their children, because they cannot handle the stress that comes along with the aftermath of what they have created, the guilt and the shame and the resentment that they have towards themselves for the actions and inactions that they did in the past that caused the children to become the way they are. It's really hard. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of humility, a lot of courage, a lot of honesty, and a lot of willingness, and a lot of open-mindedness, a lot of empathy. And I could keep listing all the characteristics that are needed in order to stay sober, but not just stay sober, to maintain emotional sobriety, to self-forgive oneself, to truly process things that have happened to them in the past in order to make room for things for their children, you know. And that's what I've done, and that's what's worked for me, because, you know, like I said, it's hard being a parent and being in recovery, but guess what? It's harder being a depressed parent than it is being a sober parent in recovery. It takes a lot more energy, I feel, to be depressed the way I was than for me to put in the work to address the things, to identify the things in order to heal the things I need to heal and I want to heal the relationship with my 9-year-old. And so I truly believe with everything in my heart, because I see the evidence, I see the results of me working my recovery, I see the results of me putting my program first. And I used to think it was selfish when people would say, your recovery has to come before anyone. I see exactly why my recovery has to come before anyone, even my own children. When somebody is jeopardized to my emotional sobriety, I have to really question a lot of things, and I have to really self-reflect and make hard choices. So I'm grateful for the people that have told me my recovery comes first, because see, the thing about that is my recovery can come first, but it can also not interfere with my parenting. I can make recovery work around my parenting. I can make parenting work around my recovery. I can be available for my child at certain times, and I can do my meetings at certain times. And so that's the thing, like, there's no excuses when it comes to Zoom meetings, I feel. And so that book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids Workbook, has been really beneficial for me. And also another book that I read a long time ago, and I still pick up from time to time to refresh my memory because of all the exercises it has, is Your Mind is What Your Brain Does for a Living. Learn How to Make It Work for You by Stephen J. Fogel. And I'm going to put that in the description. And I'm sure you can find them on Amazon. But these two books, The Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, helped me with myself and my parenting. And the other book focuses on our child conditioning, our child programming, and the messages we give ourselves and things like that. So the exercises in that book. And the funny thing is I picked up that book not too long ago. I was glancing at the exercises, and I'm like, I do all of these exercises automatic, and I don't even realize I'm doing them until I go back. So I must have read this book over and over and over and over again, the exercises, for that to happen. And that's the key with these exercises in these books, is I can't just do an exercise once and expect instant results. Like, I have to do these exercises repetitively, visit them, go back, keep them fresh, whatever I have to do to keep it fresh. And so that's how my recovery works, and that is how recovery is helping my relationship with my child, and it's helping the relationship with myself, and it's helping me be a better mother. And so I hope this video can help someone, whoever needs to hear it, and keep watching my videos.